What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we are looking at a new card that was just spoiled from Streets of New Capenna, and that is Luxior, Giada's Gift. And this is an artifact, a legendary artifact equipment for 1. With equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. Then it says, equipped permanent isn't a planeswalker and is a creature in addition to its other types. Equip Planeswalker 1 or equip 3. So you can equip this to a normal creature for 3 and give it an additional +1/+1 for every counter that it has on it, which is fine if you're in like a Selesnya counter deck, but really the part of this card that sings, that's really impressive, that really takes it to the next level and why it's a mythic is because you can equip it to a Planeswalker. That is not a normal thing. So if you're new to the game, if you're wondering why can't it, well, what's my normal equip planeswalker cost? There normally isn't one. Normally you can only equip onto creatures. The fact that you can equip onto a planeswalker with this is really what makes it shine. You might also be wondering, wait a minute, once it becomes a creature, and it no longer becomes a planeswalker, does that mean I can activate its loyalty abilities? Fortunately for us, there is some reminder text on the card. Yes, you are able to activate the loyalty abilities. They do not lose the loyalty abilities nor the ability to put loyalty counters on them. There is one key detail. Because the planeswalker is a creature and it stops being a planeswalker, they can no longer be attacked directly the way the planeswalkers normally can, because you can't attack creatures directly, you can only attack planeswalkers directly. So in a way, this actually is a way to help protect your planeswalkers because they can no longer be directly attacked from your opponent. Now, one thing that is worth noting, because they are creatures, they are susceptible to creature-based removal. Direct damage, creature-based spells, anything in combat that does impact their power and toughness. So that is relevant. Now, I don't believe that damage dealt to them in combat from blocking or attacking, or being blocked while attacking, I don't believe that impacts their loyalty. So that's going to be a huge... That's actually a question that I need to look up the answer to, because I believe the way the rules are stated, it says when a planeswalker takes damage, you remove the loyalty from them. But because this is a creature now and no longer a planeswalker, I don't believe that applies. Yeah, and really, whether I'm right or wrong on that, I believe I'm correct. But if I am wrong, if there's a ruling out there contradicting that, please somebody put it in the comments below. One point that I definitely want to make about this card that is very, very critical to understand: whenever a planeswalker becomes a creature, they become eligible and reasonable targets for things that touch creatures. And throughout Magic's history, a lot of cool things have been designed to touch creatures that were never intended to touch planeswalkers. So the moment you can touch a planeswalker with these things, stuff can get weird. Like, I've got a couple ideas off the dome. Like the Troublemaker, the new card in the new set that allows you to create copies of creatures. That this can allow you to create a copy of a planeswalker, which is kind of interesting. If you have, which I believe would die to the legend rule, but there are ways around that. There's also one card that I would be like remiss to not mention, and that's of course Obnixilis, the adversary. This card is insane. It's absolutely busted, and one of the things that makes it absolutely busted, specifically with the sword Luxior, is if you casualty Obnixilis, you get a non-legendary token copy of Obnixilis. So we were talking previously about how you can use a Seeker's Chariot to make copies of those tokens. Well, if you turn one of those tokens into a creature, all of a sudden you have a ton of copy spells at your disposal. All of a sudden you have cards like Kiki-Jiki, which can target non-legendaries only. You also have the Troublemaker, whose name is escaping me at the moment, that can create multiple copies. And the moment it becomes non-legendary, you can do that and do crazy shenanigans with it. You also have cards like Echoing Equation that turns all of your creatures into a copy of a specific creature that you have. So that's one way. You also have clone effects, like just Mirror Hall Mimic, cards, Glasspool Mimic, cards that come into play as copies of a permanent. You also have abilities that you can... what I'm trying to say is, there's a lot of weird, janky shenanigans that Luxior unlocks, and we're kind of just scratching the surface here. And I mean, obviously, Obnixilis is a big part of making some of those strategies work, but you don't even have to go that far. There are much more straightforward uses for this card that are very, very powerful. Like, for example, there is a card from New Capenna that synergizes with Luxior very, very nicely, and flavorfully this makes sense, and that is Elspeth Resplendent. Now, I personally don't think Elspeth is that great at 5 mana. I think she needs to be doing a little bit more, but the moment you put Luxior on her, all of a sudden she becomes, so you drop her on turn 5, say, let's say you don't have the 1 mana to equip Luxior just yet, that's okay. You uptick Elspeth, put a +1/+1 counter and another counter on one of your things. Okay, neat, whatever. So now you have a 6 loyalty Planeswalker. The following turn, you equip Luxior onto Elspeth. You now have a 6/6. You uptick Elspeth, targeting herself, and because now she is a creature. And so what ends up happening is you put a loyalty counter on her. All right, great. So now we're looking, and her power and toughness, because of the way Luxior is worded, is equal. Her power and toughness is effectively equal to the number of counters that are on her. So we're working with 7 loyalty counters at this point. You then put a +1/+1 counter on her. And then you put, so we're looking at 8 and she's 9 power so far. Then you put a keyword counter on her, give her freaking flying, let's say. And all of a sudden at turn 6, you're looking at like, what, a 10/10 flyer? That's a big deal. Like, that can go, like, that's really fantastic. And the following turns, you're going to be putting an additional 2 counters, or additional 3 counters on her every single turn, one of which is the +1/+1 counter. So that's, you're giving her an additional +4/+4 every single turn, in addition to a new keyword that she didn't have before. So all of a sudden, this card went, like, to be honest, in my estimation, I thought Elspeth was kind of meh. It just didn't do enough. The moment you add Luxior onto her, though, all of a sudden, that becomes a pretty powerful card that you really have to worry about. Now, your opponent can just knock it out with single targeted removal, but that better not be damage based, because her toughness is going to be really freaking big. So I think that's really cool, and to be honest, that's a deck I want to try to build. You know, this one combo turned Elspeth into a card that I didn't really care about into one that I really want to play with. That's neat. I like that. But you also don't have to go all the way to Elspeth. There are other Planeswalkers that are currently viable in Standard that this can synergize with really, really well. And one that I want to talk about, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Wandering Emperor. This is a phenomenal card. We've seen it all over the place. It's just great. Picture this. You have Luxior online. You keep up 4 mana. Your opponent attacks you. You have to have one other body in order for this to really work, but it's possible. Let's say you have a 2/2 on the board. From wherever. You could have gotten it anywhere. They attack you. You flash in Wandering Emperor. You uptick Wandering Emperor. Your little 2/2 becomes a 3/3 First Striker. Neat. Then that 3/3 First Striker trades in combat, does some stuff. You know, combat ensues. Wandering Emperor now has 4 loyalty counters on it. Next turn, you equip Luxior to the Wandering Emperor. You now have a 4/4 Planeswalker. You give it you put a +1/+1 counter on it. It suddenly becomes a 6/6 that now has First Strike until end of turn, and that can be swinging on turn 5. Not bad. You can do a lot worse than that, and it's going to continue to grow over the course of the game if it goes unchecked. So that's just good value. Like, it's just good value. Is it amazing? Not necessarily, but is it something that your opponents are really going to have to worry about? And is it something that's going to happen pretty consistently? I think so. I mean, I think Luxior fits really, really nicely. I mean, you could even equip it to say Kaito, because Kaito cares if you've attacked this turn. Nobody said, like, Kaito doesn't care if he's the one attacking. You know, all of a sudden, that's an option. How cool is that, right? So I think Luxior is absolutely fantastic. I think this is going to open up a ton of weird combo potential, because like I said, effects that are designed to target creatures are not designed to target Planeswalkers. So when that design space, when a card like this allows you to step over that design space, there are a ton of weird combos you can come up with. And I mean, we're just scratching the surface. They just revealed this sword. Like, I just found out about it about a half an hour prior to clicking record on this. So I have no doubt there is a ton of potential in this thing that I have not gotten to yet, and we are going to find out later on. Oh, another thing, there are a number of Planeswalkers that were printed in War of the Spark that are like 3 and 4 drops that come into play with like 5 and 6 or even 7 loyalty in some cases. Like Kiora the Beast Beckoner is one of them that I believe comes in with 7 loyalty. So that's just a 7/7 the moment you equip this. Like, that's fantastic. It's just huge. Really, really cheap. That's just good value. I don't know if it's a great lineup, but it's a great value. So I would advise, I genuinely believe that Luxior is a cool combo piece that can create some weird janky decks and do some really cool, you can do some cool things with. I also feel like it just makes sense as a 1 of or even a 2 of in a deck that runs a lot of Planeswalkers. Like, if you have a Super Friends deck, just put this in it. Like, there's kind of no reason not to. Being able to turn one of your good size Planeswalkers into a threat that your opponent then has to deal with on the board is pretty great. The one thing, it opens up your Planeswalker to creature removal, so you got to be really careful about that. But all in all, I think this card's fantastic. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out and what weird interactions people find, but I think they're there. So if you have some ideas, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe so that, that lets me know that you want to see more stuff like this. I appreciate that very, very much. You can also find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/hamhawks42. Please leave me a follow over there. I'd appreciate it very, very much. And I'll catch you next time I go live or on the next episode of the Overthinking MTG podcast. So thank you so much. Catch you later.